But we digress.
Anyone is a they. It's a great way to start out.
We're all they. Like,
Actually, if I'm being honest,
my
parents have been saying it for 25 years.
But truly, though,
Yeah.
I don't know. I was like, I'm not even trying to be political. Yeah. I just think like, yeah, that's like the safe default, right? Like that's what they said. I don't know. Black people were saying that for a long time. I don't know what they be talking about, honey. It's wild. It's just wild. Black people did gender non-conforming, honey. Exactly.
Yes. Okay. This is such a good start to this podcast.
Before colonialism, okay?
Oh God. We're already talking about colonialism. And
before English.
Let's go there. First topic.
Colonialism.
Colonialism. Yeah. Welcome to A Star is Born. I'm Keith West. And episode 16 is going to be a creators roundtable because I'm calling you all creators. We're going to hear from the perspective of 4 different creators. And our first guest is a queer Afro-Latinx fat babe, nomad artist, sex educator, hedonist, bruja. She is the founder of the Ash Collective, a platform she created that focuses on ancestral storytelling and community outreach, which helped her create her own solo show, Decolonizing My Vagina, a ritual performance piece that explores the reality to self-love and self-worth as seen through her experience. And I have had the pleasure, I actually saw Christina Pritter in a production of Behind the Sheets by Charlie Evans Simpson at Ensemble Studio Theater. And you can see Christina perform a monologue that Charlie wrote on the 24-hour Plays Viral Monologues page on IGTV on Instagram. So welcome, Christina.
Thank you. Oh, what a lovely introduction. You know when you hear something and you're like, oh, I want to correct this, but also I like the way that it was said.
I want you to correct me.
Oh, always.
Let's go.
With so much love.
Let's hear the correction.
Ashe, which is how I pronounce it. But no. Don't apologize because I purposely left the accent mark out after like debating because I like that the first thing you see and hear is ash and what that means and what it means to rise from the ashes, how we mark things with ashes. It's all ritualistic, and so it doesn't bother me. I'm like, yep, it's part of it too. And I offer up ashe, which means the power to bring things to life, much like the way that folks say amen or aho in Taino culture, which is also in my lineage. And yeah, it's so lovely to be here.
I'll tell you, until Michael gets back, I'll tell you about the first time I heard the word ashe.
Oh, I still haven't gotten my, like, I'm still doing this. I'm here, I'm listening.
You're like getting your creamer?
Yeah.
Amazing.
The
Amazing.
coffee has to be ready. The coffee
has to be
done.
It's 4:53, and I've brought out the bourbon, or excuse me, it's rye.
Yes.
That's where we're at.
Yeah. That is where we're at.
Right choices.
We got some shitty white wine with a little seltzer in it, so we're gonna call it a spritz.
Yes, we are. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Let's go to our next guest.
And I'm not trying to fall asleep right now, so.
No. It's 4:30. Some of us have just woken up. Our next guest just woke up. She gave me her ticket so I could see Behind the Sheets at Ensemble Studio Theater, which Christina was in. And she's one of the last people I actually saw before the lockdown in NYC. My friend is producer, director, and actor Michael Monroe. And I first worked with Michael on Agnes by Katya McMullen at 59:59. She was acting in it, and I was the assistant director for Jenna Worsham, who I love. Shout out to Jenna. And you could see her in a pilot episode that she directed and produced called Ariel and Miranda and Fate by Gina Femia, who I fucking love. I think a lot of us know who she is. She's literally one of the grooviest, chillest human beings I know. So I fuck with that. And now you can catch her on the latest season of HBO's Insecure opposite Issa Rae. And I'm literally so happy to see that happen for you, because I know you work so hard to create your own content and put yourself in rooms, and it's so fucking baller. It's not even baller, because that's like The Rock HBO. It's like baller, like Insecure Issa Rae HBO. So it makes sense. So welcome.
Thank you. I have an addition as well.
Please.
Writer is in that title. Yes,
It
Gina,
is.
for me, Gina did write the pilot episode of Ariel plus Miranda plus Fate, which was, she wrote the whole season of it. That's like the conversation about that in as succinct way as possible. I shot a pilot out of my own pocket and then fundraised to do an entire season. But this, and I filmed it, but it's not going to see the light of day for a lot of reasons. That the best way for me, like, to be diplomatic and like very respectful about it is that I just take ownership of everything. But I had a lot of hurdles that I dealt with being a Black leader. My leadership was challenged a lot, and
Yeah, I
guess
totally-
what? A bitch just wrote a pilot she's about to shop to premium channels, and several production companies have the script and are seriously looking at it, and so there's that.
I mean, ownership over what you create is everything. It's paramount, because there is so much content out. There's so many people, like agents and studio execs and like people who own copyrights that are just out there to take it. You have to claim it right away.
Yeah. Also, Christina Pitter was in my season. Yeah, she was in it, and I'm so like, but that's okay. She exists still to be hired.
Listen, we know.
So yeah, yeah, we could talk about that offline later.
Absolutely. And I do want to talk about that, because that sounds like really important information that I need to know, like right now. So I know how to like walk the world like Michael. But for now, we're going to go to our next guests. So our next guests are playwrights that are going to be collaborating with me in an upcoming virtual benefit play reading festival for New Alternatives, which provides shelter and resources for LGBTQ plus youth in NYC. And A.A. Brenner is a writer, dramaturg, and native New Yorker. Their writing blends naturalistic dialogue and heightened realism to explore queer, Jewish, and disability themes, challenging both societal power structures and theatrical form. They have written plays produced at La Jolla Playhouse, Shakespeare Theater Company, and the Hanger Theater Lab Company. And you can catch their one act, When the Wind Cries, in this fucking festival on this fucking podcast. So welcome, AA.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Keith. Yeah, so the actual title is just like the Jimi Hendrix song, The Wind Cries Mary, but I actually think I might like When the Wind Cries More. So we'll see what happens.
I've managed to fuck up one thing for each. This is like kind of incredible.
You might have like found me a better title. I'm all for it. If the shoe fits, you know. So thank you for having me. Yeah, and I'm going to be a third year at Columbia's MFA program, so that's also exciting. That's happening, and that's how I know Johnny. So
that's a beautiful transition, AA.
Thank you. Wait, before we transition though, Mike, did you just say reimagining, because I'm obsessed with that?
Oh,
that's
yeah.
What you said.
What did you say?
Reimagining facts.
Wait, I said reimagining?
No, Michael said reimagine. Like after you were like,
you said
messing
I
everything
managed to fuck up everything, and I said no, it's just a reimagining.
Oh. Yes, I'm sorry. That's the only thing about doing groups on this podcast. I have a Bluetooth speaker right here, but it echoes when I record. So, you know,
Don't
you learn
don't
16 episodes.
apologize for anything. Like, don't apologize for being you. You're so precious.
And
Little reimaginator.
Imaginator. Reimaginating this transition. Johnny Lloyd is a playwright and the producing director of Inversion Theater. His play, Or an Astronaut Play, went up at the Tank this past winter. We've all been to the Tank. This is the best thing I've seen in the Tank by far. It's just regular play, no one's solo show. Love me some solo shows, but like if we're talking about like how my time was spent in a theater and what my eyes saw and what I learned and what kept me preoccupied, not thinking about like, did I leave my keys in my apartment? Johnny's play is the best one I've seen at the Tank, and it's incredible.
Oh.
And I long for any opportunity to work with Johnny. We had worked together like back in October
On a
this
solo show.
You want to talk about what you made?
On a solo show. We we did this fun little, so one of the things that we do, that was essentially all correct. Congratulations.
Wow. Sorry, I wasn't reimagined.
So one of the things that Inversion Theater does is we do this series at the Tank called We Read Books. And one of the things that I know I was interested in, and my collaborators, Rebecca Levine and Will Steinberger, were also really interested in, are kind of how when we look at adaptations, theatrical adaptations of text, they're often extraordinarily faithful, and how that leaves out like large amounts of people who could not otherwise access that that text. And so we wanted to find ways to just completely crystallize and just like kind of like fractalize what creating adaptation would mean. And so we worked on one for the Yellow Wallpaper, and it was from the viewpoint of the house. But it was like a fun little solo show. And it was a great way to meet Keith, who is just so delightful to work with.
The reason why it was so much fun though was because I am such like an oddball, which I think is why like I do all of these obscure things, because people are like, only you would make sense for that, versus like, oh man, he could do all these things. And honestly, I prefer the first one because it just means that your work, like our collaboration, is just that much more sensible, and whatever we create, it's gonna be a lot more unique than, you know, whatever like co-starring line I say on Blue Bloods or something like that. He went over there. No.
Blue Bloods.
So
finally, a Blue Bloods reference. Let's start with Blue Bloods.
Oh, we want to talk about Blue Bloods?
Yo, let's talk about Blue Bloods.
Ooh.
Let's talk about LL Cool J. How are you still doing this?
But like, oh, I get it. Like, I get it. Entiendo eso. Pero
¿Para qué, mija?
para vivir con, I mean, because we don't need to translate. But to
No,
live,
comprendo que estoy haciendo. Si hablo español todos los días.
para vivir con sangre en tu mano, con sangre en tu mano, and like I think about that all the time. Of what does it mean to know that as a human being, we are deserving of pleasures and leisures and basic, I don't know, decencies of the earth that provides, and that
Air.
The audacity to demand such things and or act so righteously as if blood isn't on your hands. We, as human beings, no matter what we do in whatever fraction, are complicit in something. And rather than get bogged down by it or try to deny it, act on it, while knowing that we cannot change the world. But what does it mean to start with self and really reckon with that and aspire to be a better person every day? And I'm just constantly in awe of that, ever more so with our current American upheaval and so on. So
that's it. Yesterday, so we've all been bombarded with the images that we've all been bombarded with of late. And to be completely frank, I don't want to say I've been desensitized, but maybe, or yes, that is what I want to say. I have very purposefully avoided like the death videos. I can't participate in that. Like murder porn. I can't consume it, and I've been lucky to like be able to, for the most part, like avoid those images. But I'm seeing everything that most of us are seeing, and you know, I haven't had like a good cry through this, like, I'm calling it the revolution. It feels like we are in the midst of a revolution. I do think that right now that we are having a great reckoning, and I think ultimately we're going to be able to look back on, there's going to be a divide in like American history of like pre and post police as we know it. I do think ultimately like we're going to defund the police as we know it. That being said, there was a video that I saw last night. It was the first time that I had like a real cry through any of these images. It was a white police officer, female police officer, presumably, and the video started where I saw it was, we just see like this little black girl crying, and then it pans to did you see that video, Pitter?
I saw it today.
She was like,
right before this.
She was like, the police officer said, I'm sorry, she apologized for interrupting the family who was just in the park playing. She said, I apologize. I just wanted to come over to say hello. You look like a beautiful little girl. You look like you're around the same age as my child. I wanted to let you know we're not all bad. And whatever you're feeling is understandable. It's okay to feel those things. You've been bombarded with a lot of like really fucked up information. She didn't say that, but like really like crazy stuff over the last few weeks. I know it's been hard. I just don't want you to be afraid of the police. So I wanted to let you know we're all bad. And she was very well intentioned. It's hard to even like break down what was happening in that moment. It was a lot of just sadness though, just on both sides. Like I can imagine having the best of intentions and wanting to join a police force to, spark change and be the change you want to see and all that stuff, whatever. Like,
and I'd like to believe that that's why most of the people become police officers.
Right.
But I think at this point, I have to understand that like, that is not why most people choose to go into that job. I'm afraid to say that a little bit. And I know it's like, it's not just a hot take. It is like an opinion.
Right.
But from what I see, the damage that has been done to this country to people of color, specifically Black people, by the police outweighs the good that could have been done by police officers. So at this point, like if you just, I don't know, do the fucking math of a race over a job, I feel like it's pretty reasonable to say that a lot of people go into this with the right intentions, with the wrong intentions.
It's heartbreaking though. It was heartbreaking because there is nothing that woman can say or do to dispel this little girl's fears. She wanted to. She really did. She had the purest heart in that moment, and I saw it. I won't take that away from that woman. Aside from whatever opinions I have about her decision to be in that job, whatever, like none of that in this moment matters. I know that there was nothing she could do in that moment to comfort that little girl. The sheer sight of that woman terrorized that child, and the chills that went through my body, the pain, I was hurt, and only thing I wanted to do is hold that baby girl and rock her from side to side to make her feel protected, which is, I've never felt so helpless in my life. I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to feel. I was frustrated. I was sad. I was scared myself. I just felt so hopeless. And I haven't been feeling hopeless in the midst of this. I feel like so many people around me and so many people that I don't know, I'm seeing everyone being extremely proactive and hands-on and doing the best that they can. Even people who I'm just looking at side-eyed who are fucking up and like making me laugh.
Right.
They're still trying. People are really trying.
Hell yeah. We talked about Black Tile Tuesday. We saw
like people are trying, child. Even if it's for the most surface level, like I don't want to be on the wrong side of history. I don't want, like for whatever reason, people are like doing the thing.
They're doing their best at this point.
I felt hope. I felt, like, okay. But in that moment last night, I lost all of that temporarily. It was like,
I get that. I mean, there's times where you just see what's thrown at you on social media and you have to go outside of yourself a little bit. You have to go outside of your phone. I'm not ashamed to say I saw a couple of days ago the activity logged on my Instagram. I spent 3.5 hours on Instagram. I don't know what those 3.5 hours were. I couldn't tell you. I mean, it was all sorts of shit for this, for other things, for like escape. But there's what I fear about what's going to come out of coronavirus is a hunger for escapism in the way that we use our phones. And I worry that because the economy is going to go a different way, like it will take certain theaters a lot more time to come back, and we'll have to hold on to hope in different ways. But what I'm excited for is that pride is intersecting with this movement of civil rights. This is a civil rights movement right now. I think it's safe to call it that. This is this wave. Some people didn't realize that we weren't done being better people. Those people, they must know that now. I think, like, even if you're just like fragile about it, like, that shit is fucked up. And I've been reckoning with myself as an ally about like what is my allyship and how am I actually helping. What am I going to be able to do besides, because there is protesting and you need to protest. I'm in a situation where I just can't jeopardize my parents, and they're very vulnerable. And at the same time, I need to be active in like influencing what allies can do. And, like we'll be straight about it. Like AA and I, like we need to be the allies that we can be. And it's not really up to the three of you to tell us like how to do that, or for us to ask anybody how to do that. It's there's Wi-Fi. There's
Wi-Fi.
There's
we had an
Wi-Fi.
interesting conversation.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah, like Keith, when you called and were like, let's do this roundtable, let's do let's do the show, let's do a one act. It's been great to talk to people who are, trying to figure out how to make allyship, not a noun, but actually a verb, an active thing. That's like a big thing. I didn't realize how complicit I was, until this moment, like, to be completely honest. And just, it's not enough to say you're supportive. It's not enough to be supportive. You actually have to actively do the work and show up for people beyond the ways that, perhaps you and I, or certainly I was taught, was enough of showing up for people. So it's been a lot of reckoning, certainly with myself and also just with other institutions I've been a part of, as someone who went to college and now is in grad school, and both at, these very white institutions. What were things that at the time I saw and thought, oh, that's screwed up, but I didn't do anything about it. I just kind of was like, oh, that's, too bad. But that's, one shitty professor, one, bad incident that happened. And then actually be like, no, there's a bigger picture here. There's things that need to be disrupted, and we are the people. It is our responsibility to disrupt it because we did this, and it's also a community that I've found really fascinating to speak to during this time is the Jewish community, especially the white Jewish community, because there's definitely a sense from a lot of white Jews, some who are very close to me, that, you know, because we're, you know, historically persecuted, that like we're not white.
No,
Yeah,
that's not a thing. You know, Hitler said we were a different ethnicity, but it's very clear if you look around right now that Jews are not what you can even begin to call a minority. So to use that complex as saying we're people, we are not. We are not. We carry.
Also, as an outsider, but some like Jewish identity is very interesting because a lot of us forget when we're just speaking of the identity of like what it means to be Jewish. What is Jewish? It is a religious identity.
Yep.
We lose that anyone can be Jewish if your mom is Jewish or if you convert, right? And whatever that means, you know, like there are a lot of Black and brown Jewish people, but that's not an image that we are familiar with. That's not an image that we see. In the same way that there are, you know, an entire there's a whole swath from the whitest to the blackest and everything in between of Christians, of Muslims, even of Buddhists, which we typically think of as like an Eastern Asian religious ideology. Like people forget that Jewish identity in and of itself is a religious identity.
That's right.
Like ethnic. Also, well, let's also just start with language and definitions and understanding. People don't know the difference between race, ethnicity, nationality.
So dumb.
People really don't know that. People also don't know that race is a construct. And that it's not even really real in the way we measure it with math and science and DNA tests and all these things, whatever. It's like, it's fun and it's entertaining, but it's not real. And so like, when I'm very happy to even hear you acknowledge, like, correct me if I am wrong, but I think I heard you say as a Jewish person, and then you went back and corrected that to say as a white Jewish person, which I do think is very important. Ownership of your identity, your position in like the fight. And also I was reading, I don't remember it exactly, but what's the actress's name? Remind me. Gabrielle Gadot. What's her name?
Gal Gadot.
Gal Gadot.
Thank you.
Gal Gadot.
There was a lot of debate surrounding her ethnic identity and her racial identity after the great success of her film
Wonder Woman.
I'm having all the brain parts. What was the name of the movie?
Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman. What was her film? I don't know all those universes. What movie was she in?
Maybe Wonder Woman or 1984.
The original one. So there were some people who were telling
Justice
her,
League. Was it Justice League?
Yeah, sure. I don't know. The
Looking it up because I got Wi-Fi to look up information. White people.
I don't know the difference between like Marvel and DC. I'm so embarrassed to say that I don't know them. I'm
Wi-Fi.
I've only recently started to reinvestigate.
However, that's like not even important. But what the article was saying was there were people who were identifying her as like a woman of color because of her Jewish identity and her specifically where she was born. She's from Israel, correct?
Yeah, she's Israeli.
Yeah.
And so also when you look at like the history of Israel and the migration patterns and where people came from and who, like, that's when it all gets really confusing. I had a very interesting conversation. I was like, what is the race of, like, the actual race, right? Because, like, what are all the races? There's Black, there's white, there's indigenous, native, red, right? There's Asian, or Eastern Asian, which is what we typically refer to as, like, yellow people, right? And then there's, like, South Asian, which is more of a brown, is brown a race? Then there's, like, Asian. What'd you say?
Hawaiian, Pacific Asian.
Yeah, right. And then there's like the Middle East. Is Middle Eastern race? How are we classifying that? Like all those people, all those sort of like not white but white, and not brown but brown people who were, you know, like Persians, people in like the, you know, modern current day Afghanistan and Iran and Iraq and
Right.
Pakistan, like all these places, right? Like, what is that race?
It's interesting, even within, sorry, go ahead.
No, we're bouncing back and forth.
Let's do it. Even within the white Jewish community, right, there's, you know, Ashkenazi Jews, which is like my family, Eastern European, Polish, and then Sephardic Jews, you know, which, you know, that's more what you'd imagine of Africa, you know, essentially Middle Eastern Jews. And then there's, you know, Ethiopian Jews, there's Jews from all over. So, and populations that, you know, being an Ashkenazi Jew, which I think in America may be the predominant, you know,
it's a white Jew.
Population. The white Jews. There are
that's a white Jew.
Right. There's also Mizrahi Jews. I mean, there's so many different Jews, you know. So it's but a lot of them are
Mizrahi.
Yes.
There you go. But yeah, so
Ethiopian.
But it's interesting. I don't know where I was going with that, but I guess to tack on to what you were saying, just about what are Israelis?
Right.
Like, what does that even mean, you know?
Yeah, and this idea, because like when you look at yes, we all came from Africa, right? Yes, we all know. At this point, everyone knows that. And like the well, Hitter, come on. Speaking in jest, okay? Being literal right now, but like this idea of like where race even came from and skin tone, as it, like, just, it's all so confusing and annoying and complicated. And I think ultimately, like, one of the things that I have just been so frustrated about, when you really just sort of step out of yourself and even the fight that we're fighting and realize that we're having conversations and really having to legitimize the need that a human life is a human life, that's when it all is just, you realize how freaking ridiculous this fight is, that we have to fight to humanize humans.
We're all sort of realizing our value as part of a movement, not necessarily a system that we could take advantage of at this point. I think we're realizing that there's a lot of good that can be done, and you can actually do it, because if you do the groundwork yourself, that's where it starts. And the example that you set for other people, when you meet them, it shows them that, you know, if you're like, no, we're not playing that game, you're not talking this way around me. If you set that standard for yourself based on the respect and love you have for the people in your life that don't necessarily feel like you shouldn't have to stand up for other people. So what I'm getting at is that there's a lot of institutional change that needs to take place. We are all seeing the institutions that we've been a part of try to take accountability for their actions. And, you know, I always like reckon with, especially now, like I said, I'm doing my own allyship and asking myself questions that I never thought I should ask myself, but they need to be articulated so that you can understand them. And people are just afraid to articulate it, because it's like, oh, then what does that mean? But if you say it out loud, if you get it out there, you're like, wow, that's what I think in my head. And there's an importance to that. You know, Christina, we're both people that were part of the Flea. Johnny, you've collaborated with people that are part of the Flea. I'm gonna sort of be respectful of where the company member, the resident artists, are coming from right now. So I'm not gonna talk about what we are dealing with right now, but just your experiences around working with institutions. I would love to hear your reflections of that, Christina or Johnny or whoever.
Johnny, you wanna go first?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Like, I think that, oh man, there's just so much to say. I think people used to not believe me when I said burn it down. I think that was So I've, to kind of give like some background. So I've like always worked in the theater, like since I've been an adult, whatever that means. I started off in company management, general management, and then like began to transition over to being an artist. One of the reasons that I did that, outside of the fact that like I like felt this need to create more, and like not doing that was driving me crazy, but also like I think if I look at it really rationally, like I probably could have been just fine doing admin for longer. The reason that I ended up leaving was because there was, I mean, when I say that I had, as a company manager on Broadway, there was no one who looked like me, full stop. Like I never knew another Black company manager. If I think back to institutions that I've worked at, like if they were very, very, very large, then there were other like Black people working there. If like there are not, I mean, like I can think of, trying to think right now, excluding, if I think of places where there are like 15 people or less working there, I think I can think of two, and they're not like institutions for Black people. I can think of maybe two Black people that work there. I can think of probably around like 8-ish like people of color in total working in these institutions. Like these like kind of like, if you look at like the like 6 to 15 person like institution, like I mean like there are so few people of color in these situations. And what it does is it creates this it's, because I'm not gonna like sit here and be like, oh, like I was great at this job and then like it broke me down, blah 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 blah. The reality might be different than that. What the reality definitely is that I always had to think about like whether or not like I was in a racist situation before I could even begin to do my job, before I could even begin to do like the work that I needed to do. I needed to then process every single little thing that was happening to me, and I had no one around me to like compare notes with. And I like there was just no one to do that with. And the darkest, the most twisted thing is that as an artist, I have other people to compare notes to. That's messed up. Like that is so, like this is the problem with like a lot of these institutions, is that like as an artist you walk in and you're like, okay, well like so and so had a bad experience here, so and so had a bad experience here. I know this place to be racist. There need to be more people of color working here. There need to be more Black people working here. As an administrator in that organization, you don't have that. Like you have no one. And that I think is like part of the reason that I'm kind of like burnt. Like, you know, the ones that are too large are too large. They can't steer the ship. They can't do anything. And then
The
ones
aspects
that are,
of like tokenism in administrative positions is
it's
so
wild.
fucked up. Like the idea that you need a person of color in audience development because of your specific goals for that versus like seeing somebody who's actually completely qualified for the job, which like right away should be the preset. And
oh, Keith, and also the missing link though from even that is the understanding that, again, implicit bias. So when you're measuring who is the greatest for that position, people of color, non-white, male, neurotypical, cis, het, like the people who aren't that automatically are just perceived as less qualified. It like, so even when you're measuring like people's qualifications for a job, you have to understand, you have to realize and you know, ask who is even making the decision of who's qualified. Because in a perfect world, yes, we're measuring people's qualifications like for what they are, right, at face value, but that's not how it goes.
If it's a white person who's
they
choosing,
automatically like, okay, for Black people, let's just start with Black people, right? If you don't even, off the bat, if you don't have a Eurocentric, a European name, you're fucked. Already people are like, oh, Shaquana it can't be smart.
Nope.
Because we've been indoctrinated to believe anybody with polysyllabic, made up, whatever, doesn't have a European, like, historic meaning of Christ, Christian, like, none of that shit, automatically Shaquana she can't be qualified for this position because she went to some public school that didn't have funding, and she doesn't know how to read, and she doesn't sound white. And let's just be real, there is a such thing as sounding white to people, you know? Like, Black people have to even worry about like how we sound. Can you imagine filtering how you sound? The idea that Black people, not even just Black people, a lot of people code switch. The fact that we are we are reared to be bilingual within one language. What is that?
It's fucking gross.
That is maddening. The fact that I have to censor myself in how I talk and who I am when I'm in a different setting is crazy.
Yep.
But like, dude, bros don't have to worry about censoring the way they talk, because like,
no, I don't.
That's the mainstream way to talk, right? Like that very colloquial, that's colloquial ass language, right? Dude,
yep.
Bro,
whatever, man.
Whatever you say, man, calling everybody a man, right? Like, that is colloquial as fuck. But you can sound like that in a board meeting, right? With Jim and Harry and Peter. And
Jim and Harry.
But if Shaquana was to say, hey girl.
Oh ma'am, you must be in the wrong place.
You
must be in the wrong place.
Just slightly like cock her head to the side. She doing all this. And even if she was doing all this, the fact that that's like a measure of her intellect. It's disgusting.
Well, and then if we look at where, like, let's say that she does manage to get into the door at any institution, right? Where is she getting in the door at? She's getting an internship or she's getting a fellowship, right? One of the largest problems that I see in these institutions is one, like, I mean, like, the amount of privilege that you have to have in order to take one of these jobs. Like, when I was on fellowship, I could only afford to be on fellowship because I was in a city where my grandmother lived. My grandmother had a house with a room that I could stay in. Like, that is a certain level of privilege. Like, I cannot, like, I had like a friend who like was using all of that money to like pay for an apartment and like had to like side hustle so hard. The amount of effort that takes. And then on top of that, if you look at what's going on with these fellowship programs, these fellowship programs are often being used to enrich these like diversity statistics, but like no one's getting hired. Like
no.
the amount that's like the easiest place for someone to drop off like is between fellowship and like finding an actual job, or like internship and finding an actual job. And like if you can't afford to be unemployed for 6 months, or if you're not lucky enough to be like the person that they hire, who is rarely the person like of color, point blank, definitely not the Black person in the room. If there are options, like if you're not lucky enough to be that person, like then she has to like have the means to survive for like, let's say 6 months of job search while she looks for a job in the theater, which is notoriously closed. So like, and like how many of the people at her job are going to bat for her? Like, where is the, like, you know, like I'm often super straight up. Like the only reason that I'm able to work, that I still have a career in theater, that I'm still in theater at all, is because like I got very lucky and one person went to bat for me and was like, you need to meet like all of these like different people, and then one more person took a chance on me. It took exactly 2 people for me to like continuously like be like, oh, maybe I can like actually like be in the theater. And like what are the odds that she gets those 2 people if the system is so stacked against her? Like because like there are things that I have that like make me more privileged than her in lots of situations, you know. Like I like have like a very neutral sounding voice. My name is like these are all like, or not even, I don't want to say not neutral because it's not neutral. It's like, it sounds, I mean, like you can say whiter, you can say like I don't use like AAVE on a particularly regular basis. I like there are times when I code switch like in and out of things. Like I am facile with that, you know. Like I'm a guy, I am a cisgendered man. Like I have that going for me, you know. Like if we're looking at all of the things that like allow somebody to say like, I'll take a chance on him, like I'll go to bat for him, I'll vouch for him. There are all these little signifiers that I have that like make it possible that like it was still like really hard just based off of race, you know, like it's like if you're gonna go like through all of the things, then like you see how these things compound and compound and compound and compound. And like that's why so many of these institutions are untenable, because you do need like one like straight male, like white cis person to be like, yeah, that's what you need. And like that system, like that doesn't lead to like actual growth. That doesn't lead to actual change. And especially when that person is then like, I'm not equipped to handle this moment. Because then if that's the person that can actually get things done, and they're saying like, oh, like I'm seeing like a lot of like councils and like a lot of, I'm like, that's cute, like I love a council, but like if you're saying that the person who actually has the ability to make the decision can't handle making the decision, so they're gonna make decisions over here, and then a council is gonna like make some shit up over here, like that's not real. That's not a real institution.
No. And honestly, if we think about it,
that's
like
my
the people, yes. Oh
Yeah.
man.
And even if you get in the door and you get the job, you get the gig, what's the work that you're doing? Like a lot of these positions, especially these internships, these fellowships, low level, you know, salaried positions. I mean, it's grueling. It's exploitative, you know? So then it's like there were all these barriers to entry, and now I'm here, and what am I getting from this? Why am I doing this? I'm underpaid, you know, like if I'm paid at all.
If you're paid, yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah. And it's just I mean, it's, I don't know. It's
crazy.
It's disgusting.
And all of this is all based in fear, right? Because people are afraid of giving up and relinquishing their power. And power is like economic comfort, and in a lot of cases, economic luxury and abundance. So
well, that's why I love you, Michael, because you're one of those people who's not afraid to put yourself first, to create your own work that you want to produce in. I've read your bio on your website. I saw that like you are a person who wasn't getting the work that you were satisfied with, and you needed to assemble a team for yourself to produce the work that you deserve to be in. Otherwise, people aren't going to see the you that you see in yourself. And like, that's why I love you talk about that Issa Rae relationship that you sort of curated over the years, because it's a really important lesson for people, because you never know, like tomorrow I could be at the store and for some reason, like one of those Long Island Jews who created a show on CBS might be shopping for a second, and I could run into him. So I want to hear about that experience from you.
Okay, well, one, Issa, actually, there's this, I'll look for it. I'll look for a lot of these like articles and stuff that I'm referencing in this discussion, and hopefully we can like disseminate it amongst each other, and then you guys can spread it, and we can like continue to just share resources with each other. But Issa has an incredible interview where she talks about, and a lot of people have shared it since, and so I can't take credit for this idea, but although it is something that I, looking back, sort of implemented early on. But she talks about networking horizontally versus vertically. And what that means is oftentimes those of us who are still, you know, and I consider myself to still be in this position of like, I am still an emerging artist. I still have so much to accomplish to even consider myself like I don't make my money as an artist. Like I'm still not earning a living as an artist. I'm, you know, like I'm still hustling just like a lot of actors specifically. But just to answer your question, so Issa talks about this idea of networking horizontally versus vertically. And what that means is reaching out to people who are not sort of at the level that you want to be, because those people are really busy. They have relationships that they've already established and maintained, and they're incredibly difficult to even like get in touch with and communicate with for myriad reasons. how do you get the head of CBS's castings email when it's not like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the idea that she talks about is like getting with your friends, getting with people who you admire, who are still like have just as little resources as you and are more easily accessible, and nurturing relationships with those people and using your, you know, ingenuity, which oftentimes is most exercised because of a lack of resources. People get the most inventive and creative when they don't have, you know, you have to, that's when your real genius shines, when you just don't have. You know, it's like, okay, so
when you're just flailing.
Yeah, like how do I articulate, how do I make this idea of mine come to life when I don't have the money, I don't have the whatever, you know, you figure it out, right? So all of that is to say, back when I was in grad school, I saw Awkward Black Girl, which was Issa's, for those of you who don't know, her web series that I fell in love with from like that first episode where, she had a camcorder. I think I remember reading or hearing Issa talk about, she didn't have, like, so the person who was supposed to direct that day wasn't able to come through or something. Like, she just had very little to work with. And I still saw the creativity and the genius there. I was like pulled in immediately, and it wasn't because of the pomp and circumstance, right? It was the brilliance of just the content itself. It had nothing to do with production value. And I remember reaching out to her on Facebook, and I was like, girl, you are incredible. Let's stay in touch. I want to work with you. I'm still on the come up, but I know some people, like maybe I can put you in touch with someone that I know who can perhaps serve as a mentor to you on, you know, your endeavors. But like, I love you. I want to work with you. Let's stay in touch. So I reached out to Issa 9 years ago. Fast forward, I created my own relationship with her through mutual friends. Issa went to school. She went to undergrad with Jadena, who is signed to Janelle Monáe's Wonderland imprint. And Janelle and I are weird.
I'll interrupt very quickly to say Janelle Monáe is like she's like my icon. Like if I had a vision board, she would be the only thing on the vision board. Because she just spoke to queerness in a beautiful sci-fi exciting new way that sort of serves as an exposition for Hollywood to explore queerness in, and I don't think none of them have like picked up on it, like maybe a little bit, but not at all. And I love her, and I love her.
I will definitely pass along that message. She
Jesus
great.
Christ.
So yeah, the first time I met Issa in person was on the set. So we had communicated a little bit here and there, like through messages, but I met her in person for the very first time on the set of Jadena's Classic Man remix video, because she had a cameo in it, and Janelle was in the video as well. So that Jadena had introduced us. So then that was our first time meeting in person. And then being on the road with Janelle, I had seen her like at a few things here and there. And then during the Hidden Figures and Moonlight promo, and it was award season, I was at like after party with Janelle, and Issa was there, and it was another like, hey girl moment, and we took a selfie, and she texted it to me, and so that's how we exchanged like phone numbers, and that was like 2 years ago. And then this isn't something I've been super public about, but this role that I had was not my first time auditioning for Insecure. So just to let people know, like no one knows like the journey to get to the thing, right? So I began, I curate this relationship with Issa starting 9 years ago, just like on some, let's shoot the shit together, work together. I'm not even knowing where her career is gonna go. That night that we were at that party, she was like, hey girl, there are these 2 roles that I think, I have you in mind for. I'll make sure casting reaches out to you. Do you have an agent? Mind you, y'all, I still don't have an agent in this moment today. Yep.
Amazing.
Right, I have a master's degree in my craft and I don't have an agent. That just goes to show you, like, there are so many barriers, and this industry, not specifically, but definitely is another one of the industries where, like, networking and who you know and, like, relationships are paramount. So at all these tangents, at the time, one of Janelle's agents who was at WME, I was like freelancing with her. I asked her just off the cuff if she knew anyone at maybe like a mid-level agency who was looking to take on new clients. She was like, oh, send me your stuff. Let me see. She set up a meeting with me and was like, I like you. I'll send you the breakdowns and you tell me what you want me to submit you for. This is an agent at WME. This was a few years ago. And I was like, wait, what? Are you doing this because I'm Janelle's friend? Or like, she was like, no, I don't have time to just bullshit you. Like, I like you. I like your work. Let me know. Long story short, that agent left. I was working with her at the time. Issa sent me that email. I sent it to the agent, had the agent reach out with casting, and I auditioned for one of the roles, didn't even audition for the other one, and I didn't get it. And that was for season 2. And of course, I was like depressed and sad, and I was like, I thought I was a good enough actor, and I thought the audition was good, and the creator of the show was like, girl, I got you in my. So I'm like, I was sad, and I just didn't even know what that meant. And then around that time, that's when I began what, even like for my web series, that's when stuff just started. I started figuring out how to do that and like put years into that. So then that was season 2. Season 3, I didn't hear anything, you know, and I was still like, Issa is I cannot sing this woman's praises enough. She is so kind and so invested in literally bringing every single person up around her, whoever. If she sees something in you, she will never forget it. And she is so responsible with the amount of influence and power that she does have, because if she sees something, she's like, I got you. So I just chalked it up as, okay, well, we're friends now, and I just was not right for the show, or, you know, I didn't have what they needed or wanted. So then for this season, she reached back out to me. It was like a quick email like, hey girl, are you in LA? There's a role. So I was like, no, but what's up, you know? And long story short, the original, she was like, there's 2 roles. Again, there's 2 roles I'm thinking about. So the first role that I auditioned for was who Robin Thede was in episode 4, the drunk friend at the if you all have seen it, I don't know if anyone's been watching, the drunk friend at Condola's, I think it was like Thanksgiving dinner, Friendsgiving, something.
Yeah.
And I auditioned for that, didn't hear, you know, I didn't get it. I didn't hear anything. And I was like, okay. So then I reached back out to her. I was like, hey girl, I just wanted to, this was after I realized I wasn't cast, because the whole dates had passed and I didn't hear anything, and they had already, shot that episode. So I was like, hey girl, I remember you saying there's another, another role you were thinking about. What's good? I haven't heard from casting or whatever, you know. She was, I didn't even see your original audition. I don't know. Let me just hit casting. Let me just see what's going on. So this is funny. So if you did see that episode, there were 3 roles in that friend group. I auditioned for the other 2. Even the role that I got, I wasn't.
That's amazing.
But I worked in that role, and this is all. So I will just say that in addition to being a super persistent person who is not afraid to embarrass herself, and sometimes I sort of can be, I wasn't pesky with Issa. And Issa, I think, she's so warm and inviting, and she is a lovely person, and I've never been friendly with her, and I don't love her because of the opportunities that she may have for me. I'm not an opportunist in that way at all. I have met and continue to meet so many influential people, and it doesn't, if you don't have the energy, I won't fuck with you. Because I'm still in the position that I'm in, knowing
Right.
doesn't
People see each other a lot easier nowadays. You
yeah,
know, you could be so transparent.
it just doesn't mean anything for you is all
Right.
the point that I'm getting. Like what's for you is for you, and you can't just like this what do they call it, clout chasing, like that does not actually work. It doesn't help you, it doesn't
No.
do anything. You have to actually put in the work. And so I think all of that, so what has been happening for me is there's something very, I don't know what it is about me, I don't know, I still just haven't like, there's something that happens in the audition room, there's something that happens in these meetings, like people don't get it at first, people don't get it, and they just don't take a chance on me until they like see for themselves in like usually some shit that I have to do on my own, or like even if like, you know, A, B, and C person has said Michael is amazing, you have to meet her, like it just, I don't know, you know. So in this moment I still don't have an agent. I wrote this, I will say this for myself, I'm finally confident. I wrote a bomb ass pilot for an amazing concept of a show. I'm so fucking proud of it. I have been getting, I'm a new writer. It took me a long time to even identify as one, because it has been such an intimidating title to me, and intimidating identity. A writer is a serious person who wakes up at 5 a.m. with their coffee and like writes for 3 hours before the sun comes, you know, like
No,
sometimes
we're not.
4 p.m.
No, we're not.
Not at all.
I'm just saying, you know, again, stereotypes. Like that was the stereotype of a writer, and I didn't fit that shit. I'm like not the most disciplined person. I'm working on it. So like, I have been able to like create the little baby steps that I have thus far, and it's all been because of adversity. Honestly, I started creating I was born to be a performer. I've always known I wanted to be an actor. That's the only thing I've ever wanted to do. I never wanted to be a director or a writer or a producer or a veterinarian or anything. I've always wanted to be a performer, first and foremost, solely. And I have faced so much adversity. I have not been able to break into this industry in the way that I've wanted to solely as a performer. I had to roll up my sleeves and figure out, okay, I'm gonna have to create my own work, because nobody gets me. Nobody gets me. I've done some amazing work and had some amazing collaborations. That's how I know Pitter. We've worked together.
Right.
There are some people who get it and are entertained by me, and they've been like, okay, yeah, fuck with her, I get her. But
Right.
like,
Love you more than entertain, who love you.
I love you, baby. I love you so much. I love everybody. I love people. That's another thing. I'm like, fuck, I know I can be a lot and in your face, but like, I literally love everybody. I don't know what it is I'm doing to like, hey, something is happening. But so I've had to take on that role as a creator for like only for sheer necessity. And I am thankful for it now, because it is something that gives me great joy and purpose and meaning in my life. Grad school really was a microcosm of like what the industry has been for me, and I didn't know it was going to be that way, because it was an educational institution. And the grad class that I had, the acting grad class that I had, was one of the most inclusive and diverse grad acting classes you'll ever see.
Right.
If I show you guys a picture of my grad acting class, that shit is like unusual.
Yeah, Mackie and John, I know.
Mackie was an undergrad, but you know,
Oh, okay.
John, who are you talking about? John who?
John Cook.
No, he wasn't. So he wasn't. So they
Oh,
were.
okay. But they knew you. They were like they were, that was a great year for a lot of people I know. That time at University of Texas, like I didn't even know any.
Like great people, but like the people who were in, like I just had some conversations with some of my cohort. We laugh about it now. They were like, Michael, you were always in that administration's in the office, like going off, yelling at somebody about being.
Yes.
Always being like, y'all are not. Let me tell you about this one really quickly, and then I'm talking too much. This is too much. This is like really fucking self-indulgent right now.
Oh, for sure.
But I'm gonna say this one thing. This sums up who I am, what I stand for, and how I don't fucking play when it just comes to like the underdog. And I have been the underdog, but just for like all of us. So one of the reasons that I decided to go to UT was At the time, the acting program was headed by a Black woman, Fran Dorn, who I could like write her a love letter every day for the rest of my life. Amazing woman. She is how I met Meryl Streep. She was in Meryl's grad acting class at Yale, had Meryl come to UT. We had lunch with her. She did a seating chart and sat me next to Miss Madame Streep herself. Like, y'all, when we get offline, I'll show you pictures and everything. Anyway, Fran was the reason I went to UT. A Black woman heading an acting program is not usual. And she is a genius, brilliant actor, really just amazing. Fran convinced me. Fran was the reason that I went there. She wouldn't stop bothering me until I said yes.
Yes.
And so a part of like UT's website really touted this like this commitment to diversity and inclusion. It was all over their website, like all over it. And I was fed up that we were doing a production of Love's Labor's Lost. All of the pairings were interracial. All like, it's all these Black and brown people in there. I myself am Black and brown. Like, this is just this beautiful, colorful, wonderful production. And they decided to make the blonde. The lead was the woman who played the princess was my classmate, who is a blonde white woman, and they decided to make the production poster just her, this like really like feminine, coy, like white woman ness, like the image of that production. And that was like the straw that broke the camel's back for me, because they were always just doing shit like that. They like really erased us in a lot of ways, like quite literally visually erased us from a lot of things. And I like never got a lead in main stage productions until like my last year. I was cast in a role that I would never be cast in otherwise. I was mad. And the head of the entire theater and dance department was a white guy from the Midwest. His first year was our grad acting class's first year. When he came in, there was like a lot of changes he wanted to implement and stuff, and it was just tough. I scheduled a meeting with him through his secretary. I was like, I need to have a talk with you. I'm very disappointed by some decisions that you are signing off on and how it's affecting me as a person of color in this program. We need to talk. He responded, okay, yes. At the time, I had a white woman ally. She was a graduate playwriting student, Diana Grisanti. I want to shout her out. I'll never forget her. I told her about the meeting. She said, I would love to, if I'm remembering correctly, she said, I would love to attend that meeting with you as an ally and in solidarity. I would like to be in the room.
That's beautiful.
To make sure that you feel protected, and like, I want to echo your sentiments so he doesn't think that it's just from you, because I actually agree it's not okay. When he found out about that, he wanted to have another faculty member in the meeting as well. So it was like him and Susan Mickey, I think, was the woman. She was like in the department. And so I walked into that meeting with a printout from every single page on the website that had the word diversity in it, and I highlighted it. And I said, I gave it to him. I was like, I want to let you know that the reason I decided to go here was because of this. And I handed him a stack of papers. I said, you guys said that you are committed to diversity for me to feel included and at home. And I'm not feeling that at all. I've not felt it. And I want to know what your thoughts are about that. And why? Why don't I feel this way? Why did you sign off on this poster? Why do I consistently feel unseen, undermined? Why am I underutilized? No one wants to work with me. I've been labeled as this difficult person because I'm constantly like
having to fight for yourself.
I'm constantly holding up a mirror to like this white ass, like this just white supremacy is reigning supreme here, and you guys think that you're not participating in it because you're like these liberals who like we're in Austin and like what. That's
why I like go ahead, Christina.
And so all of that to I gave him the papers. He was like gobsmacked. He didn't know what to say. He was stuttering. And then Diana Grisanti's ass, we were like going in on him. It was like, me and Diana, we were going back and forth. And at the end, I was like, so what are you going to do about this?
What are you going to do?
This man, every time he saw me in the hallway after that, he used to go out of his way to ask me how I'm doing, be so nice. He was so scared. All those people were so scared about me just calling out like the shit that they were doing to me and so all of my other, my fellow marginalized people.
It's oof. When I hear that, like I can't.
Many of us have these stories. Christina, I know you have that same story a million times. John, I know, even like AA, you, Keith, we all have those stories. We all of us, no matter like what privileges we hold, we also like all of us in this conversation right now have certain privileges and also exist in the margins in certain areas. And so we understand like what it means to be in like a position of power, so to speak, or to hold a certain privilege and like our responsibility in that facet. And then also we have these experiences where we are constantly like facing adversity for things that we can't control, for like these bullshit like the lines that have been drawn by someone who says I'm better than you. And
exactly.
So we all
Christina, I am curious to hear an AA. Whichever one wants to go first. What have been your experience?
For a while. I know I said 6, but I'm good. So let's keep it rolling.
Oh, good. By the way, now that you're all your mics on, leave your fucking mics on. I know that's like a thing out of respect that you want to do.
Truly, Joe is literally right next to me, and I just don't want it to be like you can like hear like typing in the back,
If he's not talking, I don't care.
Mic is not on other things.
Traffic noise is obnoxious. Like you'll hear a siren in probably 10 minutes. So I try to balance it out.
Yeah, but if I hear it, I'll mute you and send you a message privately and let you know. None of this self-censoring bullshit on my fucking podcast. I want to hear all your background noises.
There's a small dog and there may be squeaking, so that's
if I fucking care. I love dogs.
Where are you?
I'm on the Upper West Side, something Charlie spot. Yeah, I was thinking of you today.
Sorry,
I remember, but all that say, so many various things, because I took the transition from what you were talking about, Michael, and just institutions as a whole, like the country, and how it's broken down to these factions, and also reminding myself to check in because I never asked about time, but I do have to leave for like 6:45ish for another call, but I will continue. The fact that all of this, like the walls that we face, that we need to break down, while also dealing with those, like I would much rather deal with someone who's just like, I don't think you're a human being. I don't want you to have this. I do not like you. Goodbye. Because it's so clear and transparent, as opposed to this, well, I really only like the good blacks, and I only really like the good brown people. And so, like, here's one of you, and you're light-skinned, so this is fine. Oh, you're ethnically ambiguous. Cool. And the that's not even going into the intersections of sexuality and gender and how much of that is erased. And it's so, I could speak on volumes of it, but in this moment, in this time, that the fact that I am 33 years old and I am still cracking out fucking just deep roots of like, oh, here's every single fucking way that I have been erased and have tried to like pass and survive, because that is what we're taught, especially when you are in the trenches of socioeconomic hardships. Like, fuck that, man. Like, cool. I am this is the first time in my life, simply because of unemployment and the fact that I was able to get some good gigs the last 2 years, that I can go, okay, cool. I can breathe for a second. And that is ridiculous, whether I was an artist or not. And the fact that has to be proven, or that we should be grateful for these scraps is wild, or that we have to be a certain way to get any kind of clout of, well, you're not queer enough for this, and it's like, it astounds me, and just to own it, to feel this part of like, yes, let's go, let's do this podcast, and I love it, and yes, I'm a queer fat babe, and my own reckoning of, no one needs to know this, but I like being transparent. Cool. I've dated primarily friggin' white cis men, if I'm looking at it, and going, sure. But knowing, like, no, I've dated lots of people, but where does the majority focus? What are we taught? What are we clinging on to for survival as opposed to thriving? And it's
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons I do love you, Christina, and your work is that you talk about body positivity in a way that it's as poetic as it also is just very human and empathetic. And I've been a person who's like walked around like my size my whole life. Recently I decided to get like a bit healthier, but because that complex was just built into me by society and everything around me, and especially because I chose this job and this industry, like I don't feel any different in this industry than I ever was. And I think it's going to take a long time for me to learn how to like really love myself and accept myself. But you know, the way that like fat people are treated in our industry is fucking lunacy, especially
Industry,
when
babe.
the world.
life.
I have two fat parents who even like like even me, I don't live in a fat body. I never have. I've been expounding a little bit, like, but I still enjoy thin privilege. And even like hearing the way my mom and dad talk about fatness and the relationship between fatness and health, and I'm constantly being like, okay, mama and daddy, but you know, like, your doctor is the one who gets to say that to you and like determine that, but like not some diet. Not like I don't get to tell you your experience. I understand that, but I do want to highlight some of the things that I'm hearing that just don't even sound right, landing on my ears right now. I keep conflate health with weight, like a number on the scale, and we have got to stop doing that.
You know what? I'm not going to brag, but I'd like to say that I'm living proof of that. I'm by no means like a decathlon Olympian in any shape or form, but my body, after all of the changes I've made to my health, is still completely healthy. My knees, my feet, my diabetes runs in my family, but I haven't experienced any of those symptoms yet. And I've managed to find time to bike every day. And I've lived 25 years in a fat body. So to anybody whose doctors are telling them, like, you'll die in 2 weeks, like fuck you, just a little bit.
All doctors say that, though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Another thing, though, is even if, I mean, as a disabled person, even as someone whose, body isn't quote unquote healthy or normal or anything, that folks would expect, society has this sense of looking at us and my community, that there's something wrong with us. I actually didn't even know I was disabled. So I have cerebral palsy. It's like a mildish case. I had like surgery to lengthen my heel cords when I was like 4. And my parent, like, no one told me that I had CP. They just were like, your legs are different. And I was like, okay. And it came from a good place of not wanting me to feel marginalized or like I wasn't quote unquote normal. But when we do that, when we live in a society that does that teaches us that to be normal means to deny literally the reality of your own body, of who you are.
I want to hug you right now.
Yeah, I like to do the around the computer thing where it's like,
it lands on me.
Yes, group hug. The group hug is real.
It's the community. It's the community that we're missing. And this idea, and Christina, you were saying this of, not being, queer enough, disabled enough, whatever. That's something that like haunted me, for such a long time. Feeling like you know, I wasn't a part of this community, so what does it mean? Like, did I really have CP? You know, like, but what does it mean to be normal? You know, what does any of it mean? And the problem is society, obviously, like, burn it to the ground, like we were saying. You know, it's just there is no normal. We're all different. We're all doing our things, and if you're healthy in your way to be healthy, or even if you're not healthy, if you're just yourself and you're living your life, like this whole quality of life thing with COVID, you know, people saying that they're gonna, you know, decide who lives and who dies. Who's to say? Who's to judge? You're not, you know, how can you?
Oh, thank you for the whole loop. I'll probably share it in the next couple of days, but I've been trying to really just focus my thoughts as being a queer, Black, Afro-Latina woman of color who is fat, who is the oldest of a poor family, like all of these identities and being a witch, primarily being a bruja, and like what those tapping ins, that this timing is not lost on me. Sure, at any moment in history that we have seen, there is always a time to do better. There's always a time to reckon, to do whatever. But particularly the last 3 months, we are in a global pandemic, with not even an inch close to a vaccine. If this is not the time to fucking burn shit down and get brutal in the way of honesty, radical honesty, and radical reckoning, then there will be no other time. I truly believe that.
I
this
completely
has to be it. And those that don't want to, then what are you waiting for? I don't want to hear you say anything then. Like, if you are actively wanting to find that balance of celebrating what we could have, trying to survive, and also wanting more for yourself. It's just
And the one thing I will say is there's many ways to do this. And I've been seeing, you know, a lot of narratives like you have to go out and protest, you have to be doing this, you have to be doing that. And people don't have that luxury, you know, like I'm a disabled person, I'm living with older parents. Like this is just, I can't get out there and do that, but there's other things you can do. No one's better than another. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
There is a quote that Michael R. Jackson actually said in the LA Times that I think it's sort of the summary for me of how I feel about the platform I've created for myself. And it addressed a question he was asked about how he sees the future of theater after COVID-19. And that's actually a question I ask at the end of this. So whenever this ends, maybe it'll be shortly. I mean, maybe it fucking won't, you know? Like Johnny was like, we're going to be out of here by 6. And I was like, definitely. I definitely don't want to edit that much footage. I want to edit. There's not going to be much.
I'm punctual.
What time is it? I can't find my watch or phone. I have no time.
Good. Don't look for it. This is what Michael R. Jackson said. The COVID-19 pandemic has ruthlessly exposed all long-standing, pre-existing inequities in our world. It's almost like we've wandered into the kitchen late at night, flipped on the light switch, and found every surface covered in roaches. But instead of skittering to hide, the roaches just linger and stare back defiantly. So whenever we are able to gather together again, I would like to see theater that is willing to ask more pointed, imaginative, theatrical, and potentially self-implicating questions, but the nature, history, and complexity of this infestation. For me, I feel like the roach. I felt like the roach for years, man. And there are all these people, even Michael R. Jackson. I saw Halfway Bitches Go Straight to Heaven back in December, and I went up to him at intermission. He probably can't possibly remember this, but I was just like, I was sort of a fangirl at the time. Did I embarrass myself? Maybe, possibly. Not so much like absolutely, but
it's impossible for you to embarrass yourself, baby. I keep telling you, you are a nugget of pure love, joy, and
that was my childhood nickname. That's so funny.
You are a nugget of like absolute delight, and I'm not just saying that because you know I'm not a bullshitter. I don't know.
No.
You know, like from the moment that I met you, you have this smile that is infectious. Like your heart is visible. I feel like I can see your heart through your chest. You are so kind and and bountiful. Like you've always wanted to give space. You are inviting, and I don't ever want you to think that you're anytime you share anything that you feel with anyone. I mean, I can't speak on behalf of everyone, so I will use I statements. Anytime
They all fucking hate me.
anytime that you ever expressed your sentiments to me about anything that you felt, whether it's something that I have participated in myself or like sharing something that you've seen of someone else's work, it has always been very well received and warmly welcomed, because I enjoy your presence. And I hope that anytime that you are wondering or feeling any slight amount of self-consciousness as a result of like sharing your emotions or your sentiments or your reality with someone, I invite you to push against that, because I have always enjoyed any conversation I've ever had with you.
Wow.
Because you are such a delight, and I hope that you will not ever apologize for who you are, because you are a gift to anyone who has the privilege of knowing you or meeting you or sharing space and air with you. So as you finish this story that I've so rudely interjected, I just, I feel compelled to say that to you, because I keep hearing you apologize and talking about embarrassment. And it's like, Keith, you are literally a delight. You brought all of these souls together.
Hello.
I think that I own that shit. We have got to stop apologizing for.
You're right, though. No, you are totally right. It's easy to be apologetic in a world.
Stop apologizing for.
But I shouldn't be.
The magnificent human who you are full of love and grace. So as you finish the story that I interrupted, like, don't apologize for don't bring attention to how you may have embarrassed yourself. What the fuck? No,
that's a good point, though. I appreciate all that love, and
I love you so much.
You're amazing. I love you too. I'm hugging you right through this fucking screen again. Basically, all that story was to say is that I'm speaking to people that I would not speak to. Christina's another great example. Hardly know you, and yet I feel such a kinship and a connection and an alignment with you. And I'm able to look at people and have conversations that I just would not have had it not been for opening up the truth of these inequities.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people are feeling that. There's a lot of people being like, no, you can't do Zoom plays. Well, guess what? I'm too early in my career to not do anything. What am I? If you want to like just chill, that's another thing. Or like you can like everybody, whatever you do, you win during this, because this pandemic is an excuse for everybody. This is some wild shit. Like, I don't know you, I don't know what you need, but what I need is to keep pursuing. That's a fucking Shakespeare quote. Pursue. Like, that is real.
Tomorrow.
The one thing I hope that comes out of this, and that I think we're all understanding, better as a society, who the hell knows, is just this need for connection that I feel like folks took for granted. And I hope, Keith, you were talking about like, what will the industry look like at the end of this? I hope what this has taught us more than anything is that we all need connection, and we all can and should connect to each other, because as Michael, as you said, like, we've all had these experiences in different ways. We all know what it's like to be in the sort of Asian community. We know what it's like to be in the targeted community. Like, we have all had these experiences, and we're people, and we need to just stop arguing about who is a person, what does that mean, who lives, who dies, all this stuff, and just connect with each other. And I don't know, sometimes you need to strip everything away, right? It goes back to this idea of what happens when you don't have anything, and necessity breeds invention. We have been stripped away from everything. What is there? Shining the light on, there's the roaches. What is this going to look like? So I just hope that we take this, what we're feeling now, what I'm feeling, because I can't speak for everyone, which is this need for connection and to connect to people, and put it into the art, and put it into making theater that doesn't even look like what theater usually looks like, or
Right.
used to look like. What does that even mean, So, and with Zoom,
Exactly.
whatever,
We're on the precipice of that too. You can tell, like in 2019, we had Fairview and A Strange Loop and Behind the Sheets in one fucking year. That speaks to how far we've come, and that's before we realized how vulnerable we are as a planet. Johnny, what do you
Oh
think theater
yeah.
is going to look like?
Well, I was gonna start. I was gonna start off by saying, I kind of wanted to just jump in on some of the stuff AA was saying, because I think the saddest moment that I've had in quarantine, and not the moment that made me like the angriest. There have been a lot of moments that have made me like angry. There have been a lot of moments that have made me frustrated. But like the moment that I think I was the saddest was I was on like oh man, now I have to get all these theater names right. Roundabout, when for 72 Miles to Go, they did like a community thing, where like it was like essentially like a talk back, but like Zoom, yeah, but like a Zoom like talk back led by facilitators, and they have like a lot of facilitators, and like like that's like not usually my scene, but like I was like, okay, like let's do this. Like I'm like like I was like both supporting like the show, supporting like people that were like working with the thing. And I remember there was this moment where my room was like me, another Black guy who is also queer, and then I want to say 5 white women between the ages of like 40 and 70. And so I was like about 72 miles to go. So like already like I'm on like some level of work. And it actually ended up being like delightful. Like all the things that I had to worry about, like I wasn't.
Bonnie, I'm sorry, I missed you. You said you were already on some level of what? I missed
Alert.
Oh,
Alert.
okay.
Yeah. But it ended up not being what I expected. But I think the reason that it ended up not being that, or not even the reason, but there was this moment when one of these women was like, oh, well, it was essentially like, how does this play resonate with you right now? And I mean, like, it's like, well, it's a play about a mother who can't see her family. No one can see their families unless they live with them right now. Therefore, like, this play resonates. But this one woman had clearly like just gone through some life upheaval, was like kind of newly like by herself, and then this happened, and she was like, I am so, 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 so alone. And it was just this moment of like just like this reckoning of like that's like aloneness that's like aloneness in time. And like I might not know what it's like to be alone, but I don't know what it's like to be alone over time. And like that is the part of me that's like, oh, like that is what is unique about this moment. Like I
Yeah.
could not go I could be in a place where I could not leave my house for like a week. Like that is a place that I could
Right.
be in. But like
That's what I'm
I
starting
do
to
not
see
yet
in a lot of work.
know. Yeah, like I do not yet know like that meaning of like I had a life, like that is the thing that I do not know, and now I am alone. Like that is the thing that I will not know, and like that is like I think there's some energy of that like I have found like kind of like the thing that makes me be like, that's what I want to do with my theater, not make people feel alone, but like kind of like the opposite of that. Like
Question: Are you saying that that feeling of I don't feel alone is it because you are living with someone? Like, do you live with your partner?
I do live with my partner, but also like I've been in times in my life where I'm like I am by myself. I feel alone. I feel
Like on an
lonely.
island
But I do not have the sheer life history. I do not have the length of time to have lived multiple lives and suddenly find myself alone.
right.
Like and there's I think a certain sadness in the because for me the loneliness is new, it's novel, it might be difficult, but it's novel, and it's something that I um as a younger person am able to kind of be like, well, this is a period of my life, like this is a moment for me, like, and whether or not that moment is something that I can pull myself out of, this is a moment for me. But to have lived and to have lived and to have lived long and to have lived long and well, and then find yourself on the precipice of something new, and you have no one to be with. That is the thing that I think that like theater can actually maybe help with, like can kind of like mirror back. And like that is part of like what I don't want to say excited, because I think that like, but like it's a sadness that is universal. I think that like one of the things that I've been dealing with a lot artistically is that I think a lot of I just read this Heathcliff Saunders article kind of
Me
that
too.
was about the state of musical theater.
Yo!
That I am all sorts of about, and I think I'm also all sorts of about because I have noticed that like as a Black playwright, the plays that people are interested in are my plays that like speak very specifically and often like in very clear terms about Blackness, and not the ones where it is very messy and I'm talking about whiteness also. Like if I'm talking about whiteness, Blackness, and another thing, and it's complicated and you can't immediately align yourself in one way, like if you can't immediately say like whiteness is bad, or like if you can't immediately say like, well, you know, if you can't immediately do that, then people freak out and turn off.
I mean,
And it becomes this thing about like, okay, are you interested in the Black body, or are you interested in like the Black life? Or and then you like kind of look around and you're like, are you interested in anyone's life, or are you interested in just like bodies doing things? And it seems to just be about bodies. I mean, you look at some of these plays and you're like, these are about like people going through the motions. And like, even if I'm getting like some sort of internal thing, am I getting the messy internal thing, or am I getting the easy internal thing?
Right.
They want the packageable thing. It needs to be packageable, and it needs to be palatable, and it needs to be something that they can understand. They want you to write about your identity in a way that they can understand and take and say, oh, isn't it wonderful that we, you know, had a play about folks with disabilities or queer people or trans people.
That's why I love A Strange Loop, because A Strange Loop is like the messiest of theater I've ever seen to win a Pulitzer Prize, and the mess is stunning. That's the joy of the show. How
what's it called?
You haven't. What'd you say?
Loop.
What's it called? The title? I haven't heard of it.
A Strange Loop, because it's a musical that came out of Playwrights Horizons. It was off Broadway, but at this point, as I've interviewed at least 3 or 4 people, I'm bringing like every person on individually as a part of it, because I want to see why. I mean, that connected to me as a fat person at that time, because I was at the heaviest I was in my life, and there wasn't anything happening for me. And at the time, like, I had some like late night with Seth Meyers bullshit that, because it's kind of shitty to say, but it's true. I was like, they did not get clothes in my size, and it was pretty clear. Like, I could, you know, Christina, you can read a fucking room when it comes to this stuff. Like, it was clear that they were like, this isn't gonna work. So they cut what they had planned for me. I spent a day learning a rap song by this dude, and it was gonna be the 3 of us, this rapper, me, and another person. And we were gonna go on Late Night with Seth Meyers, and we were rehearsing it. I learned everything, and I studied this man's movements. And basically my entryway when I saw Strange Loop was at that experience of being shut away. And A Strange Loop is a lot more than about fatness, as I like to say.
But
it's about the
Black encompassing. It's all it all holds weight. No pun intended. Like, it's a gravity. Please continue.
Look this up. I have no context for any of this.
You gotta read it. This guy, he deals with everything. He talks about fatness. He talks about
Tyler Perry
being gay. He talks about Tyler Perry.
Tyler
We had
Perry.
in turn so many conversations about Ryan Murphy on this podcast with those people, because they had so many opinions about these mobile.
Wait, but Keith, I'm confused. What happened with this late night? With
you couldn't perform. They cut you out because they couldn't dress you.
But what was the performance? What was your relationship to being in the
Okay. I got a backstage message from the musical guest. It'd be if Janelle made a backstage account and like messaged me, and he was like, you kind of look like me. And it was a headshot. So like they don't, see, it wasn't like I was deceiving. I looked like myself pretty much. I still kind of look like how I've always looked in some way, like from this point, you know. But he had thought that, I don't think he understood that, like,
The musical
I
or
was
something.
heavier.
The musical
It's not understanding. It's having the respect and doing your fucking job of, hi, I'm bringing you on. Great. What are your measurements? Are you providing your own costume? What allergies do you have? Basic fucking courtesies that you give to everyone else rather than assuming that everyone is a thin sample size within some kind of margin, the same way we all assume that, oh, just being thin or white passing is going to give you an immediate access like that. No, white should not be the neutral standpoint. The neutral standpoint should just simply be human. And
they didn't use you in the performance because the costumer didn't have anything in your size and then refused to go shopping for it or have an assistant pull something or something. That's what you're saying.
Basically, they
story. That's all.
right. So part of the story was that, like, they'd expressed, they were like, oh, so I guess you can kind of make this work. And from there, the manager sort of like set a tone that, like, this was going to be what I looked like. And he was like, okay, well, still we'll rehearse. And we did the dress rehearsal. And what it came down to was that the musical guest sort of, he got stage fright or something, and I was doing everything and the other guy was, and our footage looked tight, but he just sort of got shy on top of that. And they were like, well, between, like, they spoke for 15 minutes while we sat on, like, Seth Meyers' fucking little stage near his desk. And then they just, I had figured it out like 10 minutes in. I was like, oh, because me and him were like the only ones, me and the other person who was back. I'm like, oh, they're cutting us. And he was doing everything great. He had his hilarious moments too. And it's just, also, that's just, when I thought in that moment, that's show business. When people say that's show business.
Humor is, Keith, if you don't want to say it on here, I'm writing that person an email, or I'm gonna figure out that person's contact information. I'm gonna let that person know that they did a complete disservice to the production, and also it's fucked up and they didn't do their job, and I am gonna write something. Yeah. So let me know who the person's name. I'm not kidding. That is your actual job, to clothe a person.
Yep.
Yeah. And they had considered me an extra too on top of that, so they didn't.
Your job is to clothe a person. It is not difficult to do. Even if you don't come prepared with the right clothing, your job is to find it. It's not rocket science.
Nope.
And you know how many times that is what show business is. Not even just with a fat body, with any kind of a body. If the shit don't work, you are racing against the clock to make sure you find whatever is needed for the performance. You don't, like, do away with it because you fucked up. Even if you fuck up at the beginning, it's just like, okay, we have to. Do you know how many?
Show must go on. Yeah.
For a damn even for Janelle, for myself. You gotta find the shit. If you don't have it, that is a part of the job. Whether you're a customer. Like,
when you're fat, when you are fat, and the constant unlearning of simply to just be able to describe someone as opposed to putting a negative context to it. I am fat. That is literally a description.
Yeah, and that's a whole other conversation. That has become a pejorative. I fucking hate that people, like, it's a descriptor. I don't like black as a pejorative in a lot of times. Like, people dance around and whisper black. People dance around and whisper able-bodied or disabled or like the
just
way
let it be.
That a lot of descriptors, you know what a person's position and viewpoint on something is by the way in which they use the word. If they apologize for the use of a descriptor, like if you can't even say fat or apologize for saying fat, or like, you know, that person's perspective on what that is and their feelings towards it. Like, I have no qualms or problems about using the word fat, not as a fat person, because I understand my relationship to fatness, and I understand that I am not someone who views it as It is not bad. It's not
Burning.
a thing. It is an actual, in the same way that yellow, when you're describing the color yellow, you don't apologize for describing the color
No.
yellow.
Right.
It's a neutral idea.
Or when a white person says black, like that's something that's people.
That is a description in the same way that thin is, in the same way that medium is, and it's a description. And so, like, I get so,
It's exhausting. It's exhausting because it's the constant having to defend the right that you exist, as opposed to people just mind your business. And if you don't like something, look the other way. And it's very simple. If it's not hurting you directly, are you dying? Are you hurt? Is your life under attack? Because
I think people think that it is.
Yeah, they really fucking do.
It's really wild. It's so wild. And to be looked at as a burden, like, motherfucker, I'm just walking down the street. That is it. And you hate me because I am walking down the street in my fat, ethnically ambiguous body, but you're gonna, here are the gays. And then the audacity to fetishize me at the same fucking glance. Like,
oh God, yeah.
ooh, okay, motherfuckers. Okay. And before I forget, because, when you were talking about being able to take all of our wonderful things that make us different and that people want to tokenize, but you have to be able to put it in a package, when thinking about that, even then, it's not enough. And particularly, I didn't have a chance to do this earlier, in Behind the Sheet, singular, and it's Charlie Yvonne Simpson, and she is my girl. I'm literally in her home right now. And knowing, even with that, and being able to present a world, present actual history that happened, that people refuse to reckon with, and that, great, if you want to make it presentable of, it's a black suffering story, so we've packaged it enough, and that wasn't the thing. But if we want to look at it that way, that it still wasn't enough, because but is the white man really a villain? Is he a villain? Because he represents the fucking systemic racism that this country has built upon and continues to erase. So, like, fuck your palatable kind of package.
I have a story about so when I did astronaut play out of town for like a reading series in Florida with a fantastic, like, the theater company, great people. The idea of the play is essentially that, like, we kind of get to this place where there are these 4 students who are trying to go to space. The one that gets chosen is the only white man on stage. They choose him because of his look, and like there are other reasons, but like it's a clear example of just like the ways in which like racism goes said and unsaid, like, in America.
Yep.
At the end, this guy is so stupid, and you watch him for 15 minutes at the end of the play fail, essentially. Like, it is a massive failure because he does not belong there, and he realizes he does not belong there too late, because he has never had a chance to have someone say, like, you don't belong everywhere. During the talk back at this reading, we have, like, it's like almost it's not an entirely white room, but it's like mostly white people. And the director's like, well, okay, like, why do we think he's the one that ended up being chosen to go into space? And it was truly as though I watched people's heads spin 360 degrees around, trying to rationalize a reason other than racism for this man to do things. Like, I mean, like, truly, like, they were like, at one point, like, he like makes like a cardboard box helmet, and everyone's like, that's dumb. Like, everyone's like, that's stupid. And they're like, well, he put in extra work. So it was, but these are the things. People will wait in order to protect their safe space. They're not safe space. That's not what I mean. Their safety, their intellectual, like their whiteness. Let's go with whiteness. let's go with whiteness. In
Protect
order to
your
protect,
whiteness.
but also their privilege,
Woo!
they will
Or
find
weaponized
ways
guilt.
to completely reframe something so that they can, because like you see behind the sheet, like if you think that man is anything other than the villain of that story, then you did mental gymnastics. Like you did the pole vault, you stuck the landing.
Very toned down, palatable version of what actually happened.
Yes.
Right.
I don't remember hearing the word nigger in that play.
Oh no.
Nigger wasn't even like, they didn't even say nigger, right?
Nope.
Okay, so that was another thing, and this is not at all even a slight against the playwright, the play, because I knew what was. Let me tell you, I loved the show, and do you remember? I had to speak after the show, right? Because I think I was in a rush.
But we caught each other for like a good 5 minutes before we had to go. Yeah.
So moved, and having like the experience that most, if not all of us had, it was a very powerful performance, and once again another reminder of the atrocities of the period of enslavement, and really the history of modern day Western medicine. On the backs of
Black women
and cavities of Black people, quite literally, right? And I remember even sitting and being, having my emotional response. I remember thinking, I was a bit, I think I was not ambivalent. I was, I tried 5 minutes. Okay. I remember being like, okay, this is heavy, this is deep, but also this still is like not even, this is only scratching the surface of like what actually was happening, because this is still very like very palatable version of like what those women had to endure.
Yep.
And that's interesting. And just really quickly, the one thing I want to say that I think as we're talking about, like the future of theater, and we've spoken a lot about the bodies on stage, which should be the humans and the lives on stage, and the infrastructures and, administration and the powers that be that create these performances. I think one of the biggest missing pieces of this conversation, a lot of times I feel like in the conversations that I've participated in about theater and the future of it and the history of it and all that stuff, I think we really still need to push back and challenge the idea that a lot of this is, in addition to like administrative and institutional issues, a lot of the issues with theater that I have is the audience, like the audience of theater. It is very much so the audiences are older, white, theater, like subscription holders, and like there's no access to a lot of people, like regardless of ethnicity, but just even like financially, it's expensive to see theater, to see.
Right. It's actually funny that you brought up, somebody brought up Roundabout at some point, and I think Roundabout is really pivotal in creating the history of patronage as we know it today. Because in the 70s, they were the ones who found the hip, rich white people who became the old people that come to theater today. Those are the people. So right now, what's going to happen because of coronavirus is we're going to need to find a new demographic, because
thing is, like, because it's all look, this is all business, this is all money, this is an act, it's theater is a commodity, right? And so it's at the end of the day, we're all artists and we all have a message to give, but like we're the way in which we're able to be given that platform is through business institutions, like and finances are the bottom line, like the actual, the money that they're making. And unfortunately, it costs so much money to produce theater, which means it costs lots of money to experience it and be a theater goer. And so many people are left out of that. So that is already one barrier. And then also, even with all of these programs and discounts and stuff like that, I think that what the challenge and the charge that I make to theater makers as we're going forward, particularly those in the positions of power in like in the offices and the administration, we have got to figure out how to be more actively and ferociously making sure that we have an equally inclusive audience as we do, the stories that we're telling, because I can't tell you how many times I've looked around in the audience and have been marginalized just as an audience member, and the experience which, theater is to be consumed live, and the audience is a part of the story and is,
it's an extension of it. You're
like, things land differently. And if I, a joke that might just be for me and meant for me from the playwright and stuff that's for me specifically, and experiencing it being flipped on its head in a really negative way and exploited by people who are not like me and consuming that at the same time. Like, if I'm a lone voice in a sea of whiteness, let's say, or rich, rich folks, whatever, that can be alienating in and of itself. And there really has got to be a much greater charge and movement in like the audience members of theater. That shit is one of the most exclusionary aspect, because I'm seeing a lot of different stories being told. I'm seeing a lot, I'm seeing progress being made there, but like nobody who looks like me and my friends and my family, I'm not seeing those bodies in the seats.
I did this.
Just real quick, real quick, I feel like it takes away so much of the purpose. And knowing that it has to be more than having these Broadway blackout nights or these I love them. Yes, we should have things reserved for us. And also, it has to be the norm to be able to have space for all of us to be here, this accessibility and to,
and then it builds.
You know that's there, so you don't get an old white woman at a talkback going, well, why didn't the slaves just have whiskey? Why didn't they just have whiskey to endure the pain of having been experimented on?
And because that happened, I'm assuming.
Literally happened.
And also,
every single talkback. I digress.
What does it mean that this is culture, right? That this, so the plays this is why the plays are packageable, right? It's for this audience, this very white, rich audience. But if we're making them packageable for this white, rich audience, and that's dictating culture, what does that say about culture? What is, there's a wider responsibility here, beyond like culture should be accessible to everyone. That's the whole point of culture. Why does it just have to be white culture? Why does it just have to be rich culture? And, we like to pretend that like, okay, the theater's dying, no one's going to see the theater. It's all film TV anyway, but like, listen, it's all white and it's all rich. Like it's all privilege,
Yeah.
So
look at Euphoria. It's the most diverse show on HBO. Seriously, one of the, and it's made by a white dude based on an Israeli show. It's basically like the Jewiest form of like outsourcing television, like that is so inherently, that's like some Big Bang Theory bullshit. He found it in like another country and some guy was like, that's my shit, and he was like, no, because he could just be like, no.
I think too that like one of the things that like to get to the commerce of it also is that like, you talk about changing the audience. One of the most insidious parts of the whole thing is that for a variety of reasons, because ticket prices are too high, like let's start there. But also the ways in which we try to solve that problem of ticket prices being too high. What we essentially do and by we, I'm talking about like the American theater at large, is when we want to have diverse audiences, we lower ticket prices, right? So what we're saying is that shows that are appealing to diverse audiences cannot make as much money, which is the standard bearer of what the thing like needs to do, as a show that does not appeal to diverse audiences. And simultaneously say that often Black people, we can go with people of color more generally, do not value art as much as whiteness or as white people do. And like, this is the insidiousness of how we have set up like a lot of these systems of like how we kind of like market, how we paper, how we kind of like go through what ticket prices are. Because if you look at like Broadway shows,
ham for ham,
you try so hard to not discount, because once you discount, the show is devalued, and once the show is devalued, it's only a matter of time before the show will not be able to run anymore, because the ticket price demand will go so low. So what does it say that for shows that star predominantly Black people, that star predominantly people of color generally, because I think it happens on a lot of shows that star Asian people as well, a lot of shows that star Latinx people as well, what does it mean that we are immediately devaluing the price of the ticket, which is the thing that is supposed to give it its worth, instead of looking at ways to even out the ticket price generally, because the ticket price might be too high. Like, and what lessons are we teaching? Because then what you're saying is, you, like Black person who does not have access to the theater on a regular basis, or honestly, what we're actually saying is, you, like middle upper class Black person in America who does not have a history of the theater, because it is we can say localized, it is predominantly white, you know, we can say come up with a number of reasons, but like I know I growing up, like, theater, what is that? I had no concept of what theater was. So like you, like upper middle class Black person, you should not value this art form as much, because we need you to come through. So like, you know, like it's $20. Like what? And so this is not an experience for you to value. Therefore, like the art that's being put on stage is like, if you see yourself in it, like don't worry, like doesn't matter that much. Like that's crazy town.
That was literally my introduction to theater. Literally, my introduction to theater was exactly what you just described. It is wow. Oh, wow.
And the thing is, this subscription, the business model that has run the theater since roundabout, this is news to me that they were the ones who created this model. It doesn't work anymore. It's an open secret. I've worked in arts admin. Anyone who's worked in arts admin will tell you most theaters are running at a deficit. And the big question is, how are they going to make money now? How are they going to get new subscribers? What are they going to do? And honestly, this is pre-COVID. This was already happening. So I hope to God that instead of trying to save the system, you know, and save the baby and try to find new subscribers, why don't we just throw it all out? Like,
we need to break the system. We gotta break that shit down. What it comes down to is that, oh man, see, I've drank a fair amount of wine, and since I've lost some weight, like my mind just like goes quickly to wine, and like I get faster.
We've switched to bourbon over here.
Regardless, switch to bourbon.
Hello.
Yeah.
Word. We'll do. What I was going to say was that in order for us to let go of that older audience, we need to focus on the mentorship of leading the next generation of Black people that are just gonna take the space that they've been made to dance on, because colloquially, theater is for the upper class. That's how it was structured. It was always structured so that the king could sit in the back and watch a funny story about the other people. It's that otherism that is so problematic in the theater. And it's not a lot to ask for me to, you know, look at what I do. Just tell me to shut the fuck up for a while. I'll tolerate shutting the fuck up. and listening with my ears. I have 2 holes in my head and 1 big fucking mouth that I could use all the time. It's not a big deal to close one of those holes. You still have 2 of them. Really another 2. It's just it's so frustrating to me. I'm done being like fragile and sissy in this moment of time. It's over. It's
Always
done.
be sissy. Always be sissy.
Yes.
Always
I could be
sissy.
sissy, but not about racism.
Mm.
That's not where I'm gonna be a sissy. You don't want white people to be sissies. That's how white fragility was born. That's why I love Dave Chappelle.
And 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 in that statement of going like, cool, how can we appreciate the things that gave us more vocabulary, gave us more insight into things that perhaps we were blinded by, and to take white fragility and actually know that, no, this is weaponized guilt. This is weaponized guilt in such an insidious way. And Dave Chappelle, listen, I'm gonna watch your old shit with fucking Rick James, but your new shit I can't, because you are just for Black men, and you need to be for Black trans women.
You're
need
for
to
Black
be for
straight
Black
men.
women. You need to be for that. And if you're not, like, all right, cool, but I can't fuck with you.
Yeah, I think
he hasn't acknowledged how problematic that was, and he still stands behind it. And again, I think that's one of the difficult things about, like, when we call people out, the role that ego plays in learning a lesson, because a lot of times when people are called out, called in is the new way of phrasing it to be more palatable, whatever. But like the hardest part about learning a lesson for all of us, you know, is the role that ego plays when someone says, hey, that's not okay, and here's why. People listen to defend instead of listening to learn, or, you know,
Right.
and so that's the hardest part about breaking through to anybody as it pertains to anything.
That's fascinating.
All of this.
Calling in, I kind of like that better, because that gives
like a new thing people are saying. Let's call in. You know, you know, again, because of
get in the huddle.
Yeah.
Like, you did something wrong, get in the huddle. I fucking
so I think, like, that's the biggest part. I think, and I'm no psychologist at all, but I think it would be that's the community that we should look into, and the psychology behind all of this, if we can really figure out how to break through to people, and like the relationship that ego plays in all of this. Because oftentimes I think, you know, the reason people aren't seeing the humanity and all that is because we just want to be right, and we don't want to be we don't want to hear that what we're doing is problematic and dangerous to certain people.
exactly. That's sort of the thing, though, when you tell me don't be too apologetic. That's the opposite side of the spectrum, is
Right.
Dave Chappelle's problem, right? There's got to be a balance where you can examine yourself.
Again, the thing is, like, we think of racism or any ism, any sort of discrimination or xenophobia, whatever. We think that the only way, a lot of times, we think that the only way it exists is if it's evil, if it's like the intention behind it is to do harm. But oftentimes we participate in these systemic forms of oppression in ways that are well-intentioned.
Yeah.
That's the conversation that we need to continue having, and like and I think that's what this movement is attempting to do, is like, okay, like, yes, calling someone a racial epithet and screaming go home or whatever, like, that is a form of racism or whatever ism, but like, how do we participate in the systems that are oppressing, you know, X, Y, and Z people in ways that we're not intentionally like trying to do harm? And that's the hardest part, because again, when we acknowledge that and bring it to people's consciousness, again, there's this need to defend. And I think we can work towards and it's not about babysitting and the fragility and like coddling people, but I think if we can really advocate for resilience in learning. You know, you must be resilient as you're learning these lessons. You must not take everything so personally. You must figure out how to nurse yourself and figure out how to coddle yourself as you are understanding and learning about the ways in which something that you participated in caused harm to someone else. You may not do it, you know. I've caused harm to people so many times in ways that I didn't mean to. That doesn't mean that I should be let off the hook for it. That doesn't mean that my heart was in the wrong place also.
Exactly. Everybody, this is a time of real reflection.
Learn and do better. And
Yeah.
if we can like get through we're just such, especially as Americans, we're fucking like narcissistic ego,
imperialism beyond belief.
Westerner. This is like me, I. Everything is about me, and that's how we've been raised. That's how we've been reared. That is what is important to us. Me, the
Amen.
me, the culture.
We need to let go of that shit.
Continue to redistribute our attention and gaze upon others, like we all exist in this place.
Yeah, and I wonder, as my final thing before I leave, it's just, when you wake up in the morning, when you go to sleep at night, do you aim to be a better person, or do you just want to be an asshole? And be real with either one.
Mm-hmm.
Be real with either one, and like, it's all good, because individually we cannot control it all. We can start from here and hope, and perhaps that like some people are built to do those building of bridges. Some people are here to hold this space in a different way. But damn, you be transparent, be real about it. And that's okay, because we're built differently.
But just make a decision.
Make a decision and be real about it, and don't complain when we come to level the playing field.
Exactly.
And I mean burning it down.
The keeping up appearances that comes back to haunt everyone. That's the problem. That's what is catching, especially, I don't know, me in this moment, is just it's great to watch people try, but you can tell what the intention is behind it. It's you can see when folks are actually actively trying to be better, and when
they're self-serving as fuck.
That's right. And if it's selfish, if you're selfishly trying to help others, like, what are you doing? Just stop.
Yeah, that's the worst thing always, right? Those people who are just trying to get a critic's pick in the Times.
And that's every day.
And in a month. Oh yeah. Yep. I think that reckoning is about to happen, and it's going to be a sight to behold when that reckoning comes through. Because I think we're still a little bit away from that. I think that like right now we're in a necessary moment of structure and like figuring out like what structurally is not working. But when we get to like it's going to be. I live for drama. I live for mess.
Yeah.
I want to say that I appreciate this time, and I'm really grateful for this collection of beautiful souls. I am not grateful for this 7 o'clock because it's so exclusive, and I want to be able to honor essential workers who are primarily Black and brown and indigenous people, and all the nonsense hypocrisy within it. So that's happening. And I also want to say, for reckoning, you know where to find me. And there's a record that I recently did a week ago.
Amazing.
Oh yes. Oh yes. It's on the internet.
It is on the internet. The link is here. I'm gonna outro all of you. This has been my favorite podcast I've had so far. I can certainly tell you that by far. And I say that with just a little sadness because my friend Mariah Cameron isn't here right now. Michael's actually worked with Mariah. She's like my producer. Love her. But I wanted to thank you all for being here. So you could catch Christina at the Instagram right fucking here. And you can go see her monologue that she performed by Charlie Evan Simpson, whose house she is staying in right now, at the 24-hour plays viral monologue on IGTV. You can catch Michael Monroe on season 4, episode 6 of Insecure. And I'm just so fucking happy for you that happened. Like from the bottom of my heart, man. Like, I know how hard you work. That shit is amazing. You can catch A.A. Brenner's play, The Wind Cries Mary, at my benefit reading for New Alternatives in 2 weeks for Pride and Black Lives Matter. We'll be having people of color who are straight, and also LGBTQ plus voices on top of that. It's the intersection right now that I'm just so excited for. And you can catch Johnny's Play rounds in that same cycle. Thank you guys so much for coming. And this has been such a rewarding conversation.
Can we, Keith? Can we share? Like, can we maybe get a thread so we can share contact info some kind of way? Keith, you
Yes, please.
maybe get us a
Yeah.
thread or something, and